So what is intelligence really? I mean, we throw that word around all the time, right? But if you really stop and try to define it, well, it gets surprisingly slippery. Today, we're going to peel back the layers on that exact question. I mean, is it something you can just spot in someone's day-to-day life? Can you just look at their habits and figure out how smart they are? Is it the books they read? The way they talk? It's a really fascinating idea, and we're definitely going to unpack it. Okay, so you've probably seen those articles floating around, right? The ones listing like 11 simple signs of low intelligence. But here's the thing, the real story is so much more complex. So today, we're going to go on a journey, starting with those simple behaviors, then diving deep into our brains, our genes, and even the world around us to see what the science actually says. All right, so first up, let's start at the surface level. We're talking about those everyday behaviors that people often point to as, signs of low intelligence. So this one article from Your Tango points out a few classic examples. Things like getting super defensive over a little bit of feedback, or, absolutely refusing to ask for help. Rigid black and white thinking, that's another big one. And hey, let's be honest, we've probably all seen these behaviors. Maybe we've even been guilty of them ourselves from time to time. And the article makes a pretty bold claim here. It says that people who are always stuck in their comfort zones, who never try anything new, well, that's often a sign of lower intelligence. The thinking behind it is that it shows you'd rather be comfortable than actually grow and learn. And that brings us to a really important question, right? Are these things really about intelligence, or is there maybe some kind of psychological quirk going on that just makes us totally blind to our own shortcomings? Well, that's what leads us to the next layer of this whole thing. We're talking about a really well-known cognitive bias that honestly sheds a completely new light on some of these behaviors. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and here's the simple version. To even know that you're bad at something, you need to have a little bit of skill in it first. So if someone is truly incompetent at a task, they often just don't have the self-awareness to even realize it. They can't see how bad they are. And this is just a perfect illustration of the two sides of that coin. You got people with low competence who are often just wildly overconfident. I mean, they genuinely believe they're at the top of their game, but then you have the total opposite. The real experts, the highly competent people, often underestimate how good they are. They just assume that if something is easy for them, well, it must be easy for everybody. So here's the key takeaway, right? This effect gives us a powerful explanation for some of that behavior we talked about. Remember that person who never asks for help or who gets super defensive about feedback? Well, it might not just be stubbornness. From their point of view, they honestly don't think they need the help. The feedback doesn't seem valid to them. It's that classic saying, they just don't know what they don't know. Okay, but a cognitive bias, that's still just a pattern of thinking. If we really want to get to the bottom of this, we've got to go even deeper. Let's move beyond psychology for a second and ask, what's actually happening inside our brains? What role does our biology play in all this? Well, a huge study published in a journal called eLife did exactly that. They used this massive data set, the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, and they looked at the connections between cognitive skills, mental health, our genes, and, of course, the brain itself. And what they found was, honestly, pretty stunning. Get this, by combining data from 45 different kinds of brain scans, they could actually predict a person's cognitive abilities with a correlation of 0.54. Now, to put that in perspective, in statistics, a 1 is a perfect prediction and a 0 is no connection at all. So 0.54, that's a remarkably strong link. It basically proves that our cognitive performance is physically written into the very structure and function of our brains. And this just hammers home how central our biology really is. When the researchers dug into the link between our cognitive abilities and our mental health, they found that a whopping 66% of that connection could be explained by what they saw in brain scans alone. And another 21% was linked to our genetics. They used something called a polygenic score, which is basically just a summary of all the tiny genetic differences that shape a trait. So what does all that mean? It means this connection isn't just about how we act, it's deeply rooted in our biology. The way our brains are wired, the genes we get from our parents, that forms a huge part of the foundation for both how we think and how we feel. But that's still not the whole story. Right, because our biology doesn't just exist in a bubble. Nope, it's constantly interacting with the fourth and final layer of this whole puzzle, the world around us. That same eLife study, It found that 63% of the variation in that cognition mental health link was shared with environmental factors. 63%. That means our surroundings play an absolutely massive role here. And the study even breaks down what some of these factors are. On the positive side, you have things you might expect, like a parent's income and education level, or being able to do extracurricular activities. But it also included things like how safe your neighborhood is. And on the negative side, well, you have things like living in a deprived area, but also lifestyle stuff, like too much screen time or not getting enough sleep. And this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from this whole study. Our environment isn't just some separate thing from our biology. It actively shapes our biology. The researchers actually found that our brain structure and our genes could explain a big chunk of these environmental effects. Let me say that another way. Our life experiences literally get written into the physical pathways of our brains. Okay, so where does that leave us? Let's take a step back and put all these pieces of the puzzle together. Think about where we started. We began with those simple everyday behaviors. Then we peeled back a layer to look at psychology, cognitive biases. Then we went even deeper into the hard science of our brains and our genes. And finally, we connected all of that to the incredibly powerful influence of the world we live in. So let's go all the way back to that person getting defensive about feedback. Is it really just a simple sign of low intelligence? Or is it actually the result of a super complex web of their own cognitive biases, their unique brain wiring, and all the environmental factors that have shaped their entire life? I think you know the answer. The science points directly to that much more complicated picture. So the next time you catch yourself making a snap judgment about someone's intelligence based on some simple little habit, maybe just pause for a second. Because if this thing we call intelligence is really this deep, complicated dance between our brain, our genes, our psychology, and our world, then what are we really judging when we see those simple signs in other people, or even in ourselves?